6:31.
You good, Chris?
6:31, we will call the Planning Commission meeting to order. First item of business, pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I forget, do we have roll call?
It's on there. I'm going to leave it up to you.
All right.
All members are present.
All current members are present, so we'll move forward. Roll of Planning Commission's on the agenda for those who want to read it. Next item of business is approval of agenda. Any changes or updates?
No.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second?
We have a motion from Brown and a second from Crossland. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Next item of business, consent agenda. The only item on the consent agenda is Planning Commission minutes from May 1st. All those in favor? Well,
Make a motion to approve.
motion.
I'll second that.
A motion from Sargent and a second from Brown. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Next item, open forum. Open forum is limited to public comments, 3 minutes for non-agenda items. Is there anyone here for open forum? Anyone online for open forum?
There's nobody online.
All right. We will move on. Since we're cruising ahead. Council updates, item 7. Mr. Mayor.
So on the 13th, we covered, it was a long work session on firefighter full-time hiring. You almost have to watch it to get all the details. There's a lot of little details.
Dennis, your mic.
Sorry. All right. The Lawndale easement, that was an item we had tabled a couple weeks beforehand, and we basically left it as is. I think you're probably familiar with what that easement is. That's the easement that's split between two property owners in the city. It's a lesson in how not to drop an easement. And there was very little we can do to clean it up. Quarterly financial report was unremarkable. We got the Vernon's concept plan, and I believe for the most part, they had made some adjustments per your suggestions, and that's pretty much what we got. And I don't think there was anything that came out of there. And it was received well. I don't think there were any changes that we were really looking for, as I recall. Yearly audit, there's nothing remarkable there. The egg preserve request, that was unremarkable also. And then there was a approval of 2 full-time firefighters that did not pass. That was the end of that meeting. Budget discussion, again, if you're curious, you might want to watch that because it was kind of a lot of all over the place. But basically it boiled down to our capacity this year is roughly 8%, which means any spending above 8 brings the tax rate up, any spending below 8 brings it down. There's a lot of opinions on where we should go with that. Was kind of the first shot at just giving staff an idea of where we want the budget to go. Parkway neighborhood infrastructure. I think that was more of a discussion on problems with the road part that we're putting in. French Lake Road moratorium. There was a lot of discussion on what we wanted out of that. I think Jason got a very loose idea of what we wanted there. And then with some instructions for council to send in anything that they were looking for. Dayton Parkway signals, we went through that. There were a lot of questions about the southwest signals, funding questions, and the northeast signals. I think we approved half of that, right? Or we approved basically to go
Approve the design.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And then item T was just an update to City Code Chapter 31, which covers council meetings, which needed a lot of little tweaks. That was it.
All right, any questions for the mayor?
Well, kind of to Dennis and Jason, I guess. Do you feel like you need any more feedback? Are we good with the East French Lake Road, 113th? I watched that meeting, and I guess my only comment would be is I think it's important that you try to figure out what the most efficient design is as far as roadways that allows us to use as much land as possible for development, and whether the property that Oppidan was proposing to develop on is impacted, or the other suggestion where 113th extends across those wetlands. Either way, one property is going to get impacted, so the question becomes is which way is more efficient to utilize as much land without, having less roads.
Sure.
That's one thing that I'm would be curious about.
Yeah, the thought on our end is it'll be iterative. I mean, we have limitations on road, we have potential connections, but depending on what you want to use the land for is going to dictate what connections should or shouldn't.
And there's
be
really
made,
only 3 options, it seems like.
There's not a lot of options,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah, we'll start with layouts of the roads and different configurations, and then have folks put in the different land uses that they might fit with each, or tell us what tweaks are needed to adjust, so.
Yeah, I'll mention when the council discusses, the council had asked for just blank maps to create their own plans. Would the planning commission like that too?
If Jason thinks that feedback would be useful, I think it can't hurt anything.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll provide them to you. Yeah.
All right, anything else? All right, moving on to item 8A, variance for 11250 East French Lake Road.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Tonight, you're asked to hold a public hearing and consider providing a recommendation to the City Council on a variance request at 11250 East French Lake Road related to an accessory structure height proposal that would exceed the principal dwelling height. The site, as I mentioned, is zoned A1 Agriculture District, 4.78 acres in size. Property is low-density residential, guided. The applicant's requesting a variance to the accessory structure code related to building height, so he could basically replace what was existing there prior. That was an accessory structure that was lost in a fire in September 2024. Essentially, the way that the Ag District Code section is notes that the height of the accessory structure can't exceed the principal dwelling height, and there are no exceptions or to the rule there. And in a comparative residential zoning district, the height is limited to 35 feet by way of conditional use permit, or the height of the principal dwelling just outright permitted. So kind of noted through this process with the property owner going through the building permit requirements and such, that there might have been found a potential discrepancy between how the ag districts are treated for accessory structures versus residential districts. The proposed size of the structure that the applicant's looking at is a 46 by 64, which is 2,944 square feet. It'd be the exact same building footprint as the accessory structure that was lost in the fire last year. Just a note, the accessory structure size limitations in the A1 are based on an impervious surface maximum, which is 10%. Based on the property size being over almost 5 acres, there is 10% of that is roughly 20,800 square feet. With the proposal and the existing building footprint that is still there, the impervious surface is not anticipated to increase and is roughly around 18,000 square feet in total on the property. Here's an overall image from, I believe this was April of 2025, an aerial view. This is the house here with an existing access to this footprint here where the structure was. Here's just for reference, a 2019 street view that shows what the footprint of and basically what the shed would look like if it were to be rebuilt to its existing or previous form. So you can see here, the proposal includes 16-foot sidewalls with a 14-foot garage door and a 12-foot garage door on the front. Just a note, in terms of residential properties over 1 acre, the accessory structure materials for standards in the code are very flexible, where just a standard pole shed as such would be permitted outright. Just a little note on how the city measures building heights. This is for a definition from the zoning ordinance. The vertical distance between the lowest elevation where the exterior building wall emerges from the finished grade elevation pursuant to an approved grading plan and the highest point on the building. Now here, when we're looking at pitched roofs, it is the average at the roof pitch, what would be considered the median height of the building, not necessarily measured to the peak. Basically, to the peak with this proposed accessory structure, the applicant is requesting it be 25 feet 2 inches, where the median roof pitch of that building with the 16-foot sidewalls was about 20 and a half feet. The current house at its tallest point from the lowest exposed building wall to the median roof pitch is 19 feet. And just a note too, as you can see on this obviously this measurement did not come from the front. This is a single-story house with a walkout finish on the back side of it. So the code doesn't dictate where that height measurement is, found. So the assumption is that we would use any portion of the building wall being in terms of determining the maximum height. Here's a table just noting the proposed setbacks of the structure does meet all of the requirements, and then a note on what the deviation from the code standard is being requested. And then there's the code section there on the requirements for building design on accessory structures in residential districts over 1 acre. In review of this variance request, this was kind of a situation where, unbeknownst to the property owner, after the fire, by way of code and Minnesota state statute, the property owner is allowed to apply for a building permit for a non-conforming structure that has been lost to a fire, which deems that 50% or greater of the structure was lost. They have 180 days within that time span from the date of the fire to apply for a building permit to essentially build the existing or the previous nonconformity back to its existing standard. This 180 days had lapsed by the time the property owner had reached out to the city for this. And originally, when we were looking through the code, found that the variance was the only route because of that that distinction between residential districts and ag districts for accessory structure height. But anyways, in reviewing the variance request, there is a 3-part test that variances within the city and statute dictate to allow for such variance. marijuana variance should only be permitted when it is in general harmony with the purpose and intent of the city code and consistent with the comprehensive plan. This is a single-family residential property. The property is guided for low-density residential. Staff's general belief does not believe that this would be in conflict with the comprehensive plan. Accessory structures are allowed by right in residential and agriculture districts, but really the limitation here is that height request. The property owner proposes to use the lot or parcel in a reasonable manner not permitted by the zoning ordinance. The proposed use is for personal storage of items of the property. This is permitted generally within the city, and the variance is specific to the structure height. Really, the main limitation or the main question that staff comes to mind in this three-part test is the plight or the practical difficulty that is identified by the property owner or found through review by staff. The circumstance in this situation is really limited to the zoning ordinance language in staff's opinion. Variances are hard to justify when it comes to new construction, and as we have mentioned prior in other meetings, staff's general recommendation is that if the planning commission finds that for the time being, if this variance warrants if this variance is justified through these sections of the three-part test, staff would really recommend that if you do choose to recommend approval, that you direct staff to look into that potential discrepancy in the zoning ordinance and correct that. The baseline recommendation from staff for change language would be to at least mimic what is the standard in residential districts. As this is a ag zoned property, the principal use of the property is residential and not agriculture. So I guess be a quasi residential district in that regard. But again, that would be staff's general recommendation. The alternative essentially would be to recommend denial for this variance request, and the city staff would come back with an ordinance amendment to still address this, and then have the property owner come back for a conditional use permit. In staff's opinion, staff believes that if that is the general direction of the planning commission, we would recommend that this variance gets approved, essentially because a variance in this regard would not be practical following an ordinance amendment. So you wouldn't see a request like this again. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I believe the property owner is here as well. So,
Any questions for staff?
Is it an ordinance issue or a zoning issue as far as correcting it? Meaning, if we just zoned it something else, would that solve the problem? I guess something for you staff to think about, because I kind of view it as, I get it, it's zoned A1 because it's a holding district, but if the intention is, well, this is going to present challenges whenever it gets developed with the narrow lot width. So I guess my point is that there's a pretty good chance it might remain large lot residential for a long, long, long time.
sure.
And to me, it sounds like an appropriate zoning is more appropriate that would allow this to happen than on top of it, is what you're saying.
Staff did look at that question and did pose the option to the applicant on if he would want to see his property get rezoned from agriculture to residential. The property owner had mentioned to staff that his intention would be to stay in the ag zoning district as a non-conforming lot. Essentially, if he would have requested rezoning to, let's say, R2 would probably have been the closest related district. Not that this would be an issue, but there would be the only R2 district surrounded by ag and R3 properties. Not that you would consider that spot zoning, though.
Yeah, when ag is a holding zone, I don't consider, in this case, it's a
Sure.
holding zone, I don't consider it spot zoning.
And when we did look at that, the R2 district is specifically for properties that do not have access to municipal utilities. This property is currently hooked up to city water and does have the opportunity to connect to city sewer at the time of a failing septic system. So that was kind of the limitation to the R2 district. Not to say that this 4-acre property couldn't have been rezoned to R1, But it was looked into, and this was the general direction that we had received.
Okay. So the ordinance amendment would then be to the ag district.
It would be specific to the agriculture districts.
I just want to make sure there's no other repercussions for the actual ag district parcels.
No, it would offer the opportunity for that type of conditional use permit for a structure to exceed the principal dwelling height for any ag property within town.
Okay.
So I got a question on the heights, and I brought this up in the past because we've had this come up before. Fairly familiar with the property. I've driven by it several times. The pictures from 2019 show the garage is way set back. It's a walkout. Are we measuring off of an elevation, or are we measuring off of ground height?
Ground height,
Because-
based on this definition, was my
Yeah, and the reason I bring this up is this is something for the us to consider, and us as a city to consider it for the ordinance. Is this should really be an elevation thing, because we don't want that accessory structure to be taller than the principal structure. But if that accessory structure is sunken down 5 feet, now we're arbitrarily saying, well, you measure from ground height, but really we care about the road or aesthetics from the road, right? And I think that's the intent behind the ordinance, and that's kind of where I'm leaning on this already.
I agree. You said the footprint of the building's the same as the height, the same as the previous structure as well?
I believe so. I'm not.
Very close. So, yeah, I mean, I live half a block away, right? So I see this property every day. The way that the original garage or shed sat, like Chair was saying, it is down a little bit. You can't really see these two structures side by side as far as the principal structure and this proposed shed. I think the intent of the code is being met as far as trying to, limit that kind of variation in height. If these two structures were right next to each other, it would be a little bit different than the current situation is now. So I think that the intent is there, and I think that, looking at probably a text amendment, ordinance change to address this type of situation as more of a conditional use permit is probably the way to go, in my opinion.
One question I have for the chair on the elevation discussion when defining how do you measure the building height? I was thinking about this as well when going through this, and unfortunately the way that it's defined, I didn't feel that at a staff level I had the latitude to make that distinction without bringing this to you. I guess on the opposite end, my question is that if there's significant grade changes where the house is sat low and there are other areas that are high level for an accessory structure on the property, would you say that elevation would still be the limitation where?
So the way I would answer that, and I'm being very pragmatic when I say this, I think our code works in that regard. If you measure ground elevation to height, for something that's sitting higher, because we don't want to necessarily limit people. But in a case like where TJ's got it, where the accessory building sits lower, we should allow them that flexibility to go just a little bit higher, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yep, I think it does. I think you're kind of creating two circumstances for different situations, or a circumstance for each situation there, and I think that
The other
sense.
challenge that I was going to raise with this, and I mean, obviously the elevation of the accessory structure does not match agricultural. Well, how do I say this? It's not a barn, right? We have a fair amount of properties in A1. We have. And if our A1 does not allow you to build a taller structure, I mean, we all know that barns with haylofts are much larger than your house. And if we want to encourage as a city to allow that to be a product that people want, that people desire, that was something I was going to challenge a little bit of of the way our code is written for agricultural properties is if we're limiting the height on them, then they can't build that style of outbuilding,
Yeah.
which is problematic.
Mr. Chair, we kind of getting into the weeds a little bit here,
Yep.
but when it comes to ag use buildings, strictly used for ag, those by state statute are exempt from building permit review process and otherwise wouldn't have that review opportunity from the zoning standpoint. So if it was a barn dedicated to hay storage or something like that, we wouldn't see that.
Understood. Where I'm going is the perception of the type of city we want to be. And if we want to encourage larger lots with houses that look like old farmhouses and accessory structures that look like old barns, maybe we want to consider amending that for specific types of looks.
Creating a new zoning district, that was kind of where I was going
Or-
with it too.
Yeah,
Is because we have tons of parcels that are zoned A1 that aren't really in agricultural districts, and there's been a lot of push to preserve, or excuse me, to create more rural lots. I think there
Yes.
should be as much push to preserve, meaning that, you know, you have your own little zoning code that allows people to do more with their land, especially parcels like this, that it's going to be a challenge.
so it's probably more on staff than it is the actual ordinance
Yeah.
or than what we're seeing tonight. But it was a question that came up in my mind of why are we, on an agricultural lot, why are we not allowing them to build a building that
What they
want?
need.
Yeah, that
What
they
they
want to
want.
use.
Yeah. And getting back to your point, the review process won't catch it, but wouldn't they still be in violation of the statute, of the ordinance?
Not because the agriculture.
So it exempts them not only from the app process, but the ordinances.
Correct, yeah. We wouldn't have the opportunity to do a review of the building until after it was
Does
constructed.
ag get
and-
away with all?
It's nothing right or wrong, but it's all the more point that if you have
Yeah.
larger acre lots that are zoned A1, they should probably be zoned, and if we have to create a new zoning, that's what we have to do.
Some kind of residential zone.
Yeah.
Or the alternative, if the, and this isn't an alternative, but the other thing that could occur too is instead of mimicking what the residential district standards are for accessory structure height, maybe there's just a flat height standard in the A1 that wouldn't necessarily require a conditional use permit.
Yeah, I don't think we have to worry about too many egg buildings being built. It's more of the hobby farm type buildings.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was getting at.
So this deserves a longer conversation, but we're getting outside the
Let's
scope of the application.
All right, so this is a public hearing. The applicant's here. I'm going to open the public hearing at 6:58. Would the applicant like to come forward? I don't know if there's any questions or if you have anything more to say.
No, I don't have any.
More to say, I think, dealing with my situation, but I do agree with kind of the direction you guys are looking at with this other sort of way to zone properties that are out there wouldn't be a terrible idea. Just because there are, I think Dayton going forward could be really, really unique when it comes to having hobby farms or smaller type, farm area with bigger lots and a few structures on them. I think it could be Dayton, used to be some place that never, people even know what it was, never heard of it. And where's Dayton, right? Well, it's by Maple Grove, from between Rogers, blah, blah, blah. But now it's becoming so known, and it's becoming city, right? The city's moving around it and into it in areas, which is whatever. But I think you could really envision a unique place within the city of maybe certain areas within Dayton. I don't know how you would do it, but that's because I've grown up in Dayton. I lived in Dayton my entire life, so to see like a lot of these new houses being so close together is good. It's not a bad thing, but I really do. Where else do you out in Orono? Orono would be a great example of bigger lots with bigger houses, and their property values are so high out there because there's such a it's a unique area within the city, right? To be able to have some land. So I challenge you guys to take that up and look at it and see if maybe there's areas that would be a good place for that within our city. So I care about Dayton, so. That's all I have to say. Other than that, I appreciate you guys looking into, this variance for me. I'm just trying to get back what I had. That's all it is, so.
I think I had 3 questions. Your footprint's generally the same,
Yep, it's very close, yep,
and so that means it's also same setback from French Lake.
yes. Yep.
And then, I didn't have, my third one I lost.
Yeah, the only other question I had is, and Hayden addressed it a little bit, but you had no clue about the state statute that would allow you to pull a building permit within 6 months after the destruction.
Correct.
So, I mean, that's a good practical difficulty in my mind is, I mean, ignorance isn't always, can't always plead ignorance and try to get away with it, but in this case, it was destroyed in September. I think the last thing on your mind probably was, let's get this thing built as soon as we can. You were dealing with making sure all your possessions were taken care of, demolition, all that stuff, which I don't think happened during the winter, right? So I just think the timeline of when this happened and when it would make the most sense for you to pull a building permit probably was when you did, and when you realized that you should have done it 6 months ago or 3 months ago or whatever it was, to not have to go through this process with us tonight. Right?
Correct.
So,
Correct.
I mean, given the fact that it's a 1-for-1 or pretty darn close, just replacing what you had there, the setbacks, like I said earlier, it's not right up against the street. It's not overbearing. I think if you were to actually stand on the street, you're just kind of taking a glance. I think that house is maybe even looks a little bit taller even,
Yeah,
or at least the same
it does.
height,
Yeah.
right, if that's what we're discussing tonight. So I have no problem approving this variance, and then obviously we'd probably want to look at the staff level to tweak, the conditions or whatever it might be to make this a conditional use permit in the future. But yeah, for those reasons, I've no problem recommending approval of this variance.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant?
No questions.
A lot of that was, it was just the process. The insurance process takes forever. And by the time I actually got to, realize that now I have a better idea. I had no idea up until when I did apply for the permit, like how big I could financially go. Right? Because different details they don't matter, but I wasn't able to replace what I had originally. Like I'm moving things around to make it work, right? So it's not like I can just, here you go, here's a check, and rebuild exactly what you had. It wasn't like that at all. It's like I'm constantly moving and adjusting depending on what, due to the process. So that's all it was.
Even if you knew about the state statute, it probably would have been really difficult for you to apply for a building permit because you wouldn't have known what you wanted to build at that point within the first 6 months.
Pretty much. I mean, at one point I was way smaller because I just don't know. But yeah, you don't want. I was under the understanding a little bit too that not from anybody here at the city, but just from contractors that I know that are just like, don't apply for a permit until you know what size you're going to be. Like, do not go in there, because if we go in with a smaller one than you end up actually wanting and being approved for later on, it's going to be a problem. If you go bigger, smaller is one thing, but if you try to turn around and go bigger, it's going to be like, don't even attempt to do it. I was like, okay, well, I guess then, so there's just whatever. Just little small details, but yeah, it didn't matter anyways because I didn't know what size I could go with. So, but yeah, that's all I have for you.
All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
This is a public hearing. It is open. Anyone here wishing to speak on this item?
Thank you.
Name and address, please.
My name is Tim Zibikowski. My address is 11270 East French Lake Road, and I share one long border with the property that you're discussing. I've lived in Dayton for 45 years, and a number of times I've come to hearings, to the council, to other commission meetings, and I've spoken up when I thought I had something of significance to say, and on behalf of the neighbors. I wanted to talk to you tonight because this is a really interesting hearing. The very first time I went to a hearing and spoke up was about 40 years ago for this property, for the owner to put up the pole building that was there before it burned down. And I spoke in favor of the owner putting up the pole barn. I've looked at that pole barn before it burned down for 40 years. I saw no problem whatsoever with the height compared to the height of the house. In fact, the problem I have with the height are the heights of the new development houses that are much, much higher than this pole barn was and is. That's more of an issue to me than the height of this. And just as, for anybody that's not familiar with that area, I did a quick count while I was up and down the road the other day. There's about 18 properties on East French Lake Road between Territorial Road and 117th, where this property is located. 14 of those have pole barns. So this is basically the look of the neighborhood before we had residential housing, the big developments put in. So I'm only here to speak in favor of the variance. Hopefully you guys will feel better about going ahead and giving him a variance for this. And the only other thing I have to say is I just appreciate all the work you guys do on behalf of the city of Dayton. So thank you.
Did they need a variance 40 years ago to put that first one
I
in?
believe so. And there was just an issue. At that time, he was storing a bunch of equipment out in his yard and wanted to put up the pole barn to store the equipment inside. And I just said, you know what? I'd much rather look at the pole barn than all that equipment stored out in the yard. I can't remember if the height was an issue at that time. I don't remember that specific issue, but in terms of the height, as far as I'm concerned, was never a problem, has never been a problem for the last 40 years, and I don't expect it to be a problem as long as I live there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Anyone else? Anyone online?
If anybody's online that would like to speak, use the raise your hand function on Zoom.
All right. With that, at 7:08, we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion, or can we move into a motion?
I echo Jeff's comments about having no concerns about this. I guess when we get into talking about the accessory building, heights and sizes again, I'd question, like, does it have to be relegated to the height of the house? We get these one-story ramblers, it really makes it impossible to build a building that's useful to anybody. So we should just have that as part of the conversation too, and if that's really the right requirement to have.
Yeah, I would echo Paul's comments and also Jeff's comment on the hardship related to the 6-month rule.
Yeah.
I think that is a true hardship in this circumstance. With that being said, I'll make a motion to approve the variance for the building height, for the accessory building height.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Brown and a second from Crossland.
Just some comments. Do we want the staff to take a look at the possibility of changing this over to a conditional use permit type of situation, or is that going to be more of a future discussion that we'll have kind of all-encompassing about different zoning requirements and perhaps creating a new zoning classification for these types of properties? Or I know that Hayden wanted some direction on that as well.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, can you describe a conditional use permit and what that would encompass?
Yeah, so a conditional use permit is actually through the same timeline process as a variance. However, a conditional use permit essentially allows the planning commission and city council to attach conditions to approval of a use or whatever it may be. If those conditions are able to be met, whatever they may be, conditional use permits are assumed permitted outright based on those conditions. So that would be the
But they
difference.
stay with the property?
They run with the land. correct?
Same as a
They run
variance.
with the
Same
land.
as variance.
Interim is when they expire, when,
Generally
upon sale.
should, right?
Yeah,
But not
yeah.
always.
So,
Yep, variances are treated on the property exactly like
so
a
if we
conditional use permit
issued a
is.
variance today and changed it to a conditional use permit, it would have very little,
No impact.
But we would have
Very little
to do
impact.
some ordinance amendments
Yeah.
or something to be able to do a CUP.
Correct. If
So there'd be
that,
some delays.
if,
So
if the conditional use permit in terms of mimicking what is in the residential districts is something the planning commission wants us to look into, we can certainly do that. We can also, take a look at other, surrounding communities that deal with agriculture properties or ag zone properties and, understand what their limitations are. And we could also bring a potential option for you to not require a conditional use permit, but just set a standard maximum.
Seems to make sense in my mind to proceed with the variance at this point, and if another option presents itself. But you don't have to use the variance, that's obviously better, but.
Yep. That's where I'm at.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
We have a motion from from Brown and a second from Crossland. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 4-0. All right.
Mr. Chair, just to note that'll go to the city council on June 24th. And the resolution will be drafted for the city council's considerations, including the hardship related to the 180 days situation, so.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, item 8B, concept plan review for 121st Avenue, Rogers Ops.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Tonight you're asked to review a concept plan for a contractor's operation with accessory use outdoor storage on a property that's zoned I-1 light industrial in the current staging area and guided for industrial. The site is located on the corner of West French Lake Road and 121st Avenue North. The overall site's 8.43 acres and currently is an outlot of the Dayton Field 4th Edition. Previous to me, the site was approved for a similar use in 2023, along with the adjacent property, kind of all as one project. That this specific site never come to fruition in terms of proceeding with construction. Here's a snapshot of the concept plan. The applicants are proposing a 26,000 square foot building split between 8,000 square feet of office space and 18,000 square feet of warehouse and shop area. This is for a utility contractor out of Clearwater, Minnesota that would basically build this site and have this not necessarily a headquarters, but more of a satellite location for the existing business. Employee and customer parking is shown up adjacent to 121st Avenue, along with paved asphalt outdoor storage area enclosed completely by a what has been proposed as an 8-foot tall gate. Associated with outdoor storage as an accessory use would also require some additional landscaping standards along those fence lines. And as you go into the site, actually I think I have a better location or page here. Yeah, here we go. So here is a combination of the outdoor storage area, essentially bound by this yellow line, noting what the drive aisle would be to the back side of the building. There are proposed fuel tanks and dumpsters stored within the enclosed area. Back on this building wall are garage doors, essentially establishing this area as a maneuvering area for the site, and then a proposed gravel outdoor storage location in back to store the heavier equipment that is utilized for the business. Here are the elevations for the proposed architecture. The architecture is from staff's review in general compliance with the I-1 district standards, and that'll essentially get reviewed as well during the preliminary plat phase and the building permit phase. Here are the two sides. If you're along that drive aisle that I had referenced, adjacent to the outdoor storage would be this area here, and then this would be basically the back area where that maneuver area was on the site plan. It's just an overall site, a view of the site looking south. Directly across the street is the, I believe it's Capital Partners, or now known as Invent warehouse facility. And the proposed access on this concept plan would be aligned with the one across the street.
South is to the up?
Yep, south, so looking south, it would be up this way.
Yep, okay.
Just general view of building setbacks proposed in the concept plan are all in compliance with the I-1 district standards. And same with the parking setbacks as well. Though I will make a note on the parking setback, there is a standard within the I-1 district that states parking areas in I-1 districts or off-site parking is not allowed to be between the front facade of the building and the street. That was something that was found during our review that, in staff's opinion, has not necessarily been followed, whether those are flexibilities by way of PUD, but that would be something that staff would be interested in taking a further look at to understand why that condition was established when the I-1 district was last amended.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, so the parking requirements or the parking code for the I-1 district does not allow for parking spaces to be located between the front facade of the building and the street.
Yeah, that wasn't discussed when we, that must be coming from a separate parking section.
It was from, yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
And I'm still looking to find out when that was amended and when that was adopted, but I'd certainly take feedback on that item as we go along here.
And it doesn't seem practical in most cases.
Or desirable.
Yeah.
In terms of impervious surface coverage and maximum building footprint coverage, both standards are in compliance as proposed by the concept plan. The outdoor storage area is limited to 20% of the net area of the property or 2 acres, whichever is less. The existing, without actually, this is including drive aisles that wouldn't be calculated within the outdoor storage area. If there was a drive aisle defined, that area wouldn't be considered part of the outdoor storage area, but as it's currently shown, there is at about 14.4% of the net area of the property. Just to address the outdoor storage, one of the considerations that I wanted to bring forward tonight related to discussions with the property, with the applicant rather, is that the applicant is looking for 35,000 square feet roughly of outdoor storage that is surfaced with gravel rather than meeting the code standard for asphalt or concrete. The applicant has informed that staff that due to the large track equipment that would be maneuvering and around the site, the practicality of having asphalt would require constant repair to that area, and reinforced concrete from my understanding would likely make this project not feasible, I guess, as an overall site development. I do want to note for your consideration that the code does not currently offer flexibility to this standard unless by way of a planned unit development or variance. So staff's looking also for general feedback, as well as the applicant would be looking for general feedback to that standard as well moving forward.
Say, in practice, we do have 2 similar facilities that have gravel lots, so Ziegler and RDO, and I believe RDO was a PUD, Ziegler is not.
Yeah, and they were both in before we addressed the code. I don't think the spirit of the code was more not to have just all gravel outdoor storage whenever someone came in. So I'd be interested to hear the applicant's use on this site.
Just moving along, the other note about the outdoor storage location is the code section for outdoor storage in the I-1 district does not allow for outdoor storage as an accessory use when the abutting area is guided for residential. So when the adjacent property being the vacant lot that's guided for a mobile home park expansion is in the general area of where this outdoor storage would be. Now, depending on your perspective of what does abutting mean, there is a wetland setback in that property, along that property line that could be considered not abutting. I will note that based on this application that was provided, we did reach out to the current property owners of that property. They are actually the old owners of the existing mobile home park, and they have informed us that there is no intentions at this time or in the near future, or even in the distant future, that they would be looking to expand the existing manufactured home park on this site.
It's not the same owner between the undeveloped land and the manufactured housing park right now?
That is correct. The previous owner sold that, the existing, and kept the vacant one.
Do you have a map showing where that is in relation to the proposed use here?
So this is the existing park, the vacant property, and then here is the subject property.
So, I mean, I think legally it's abutting, right? I mean, there's a easement in there, but if it's by property or property, that it is abutting, those two properties are abutting. So I think we'd have to take that in consideration in that aspect.
The same way as a street right-of-way wouldn't necessarily mean that properties do not abut each other. I mean,
Correct.
This doesn't solve the abutting issue, Jeff, but this will help maybe put everything in context for you. But at one point in time, the same property owner that owned that vacant parcel owned the parcel that the applicants here, as well as the stuff to the north of the road that put in.
Yeah.
And even when MTL was approved, which is the building to the south, I don't believe at that time it was re-guided yet. It got re-guided relatively recently, didn't it?
you mean after the original adoption of the 2040
Yeah,
plan?
when we first started talking about this, was always guided industrial. At some point in time, it got re-guided. And there are some challenges to the site with wetlands.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah, no, I
just so you knew the history.
Right, no, I don't have any, I think it's a moot point. I think, the development should probably go in there. It's a good site for it. I just think we have to find the solution to that requirement, or whatever the, recommendation is as far as building outdoor storage next to properties that are guided for residential, so.
Is it, yeah, maybe it can be as simple as, is it being more specific where you limit it to not allow when adjacent to low-density residential, or whatever the
Potentially, yeah.
the
I think
case
ultimately
may
it
be.
boils down to the screening, and the question that we have to ask ourselves on this property is there enough space and screening? And if it is, that's an important thing to address. We can probably address that through a PUD.
Well, that was the other thing that I was also thinking about, was that all outdoor storage proposals require a conditional use permit, yet there are set standards within that outdoor storage that would have to adhere to, aside from any conditions that would be on that conditional use permit. So maybe it does come down to more of a question of whether those specific standards are needed as a blanket statement on the outdoor storage as an accessory use listing, or if these should be reviewed on a case-by-case basis by way of the conditional use permit.
It'll be easier on a case-by-case basis because we're not going to think of all the possibilities.
Let's
Yeah.
keep moving. Does staff have anything more to present? Then we can
Yes.
do some more discussion.
So I already made the note about the parking not being allowed between the front facade and the street edge. The plan does show for a total of 77 parking spaces outside of the enclosed area. Just for your knowledge, office space requires one space per 200 square feet of floor area, requiring 40 for this site, and the shop does require one space per 2,000 square feet, or the maximum number of employees on a given shift. That could be further determined through the preliminary plat process. We didn't have that information for the concept, but staff's general understanding is that this would be in compliance with the intention of the ordinance. It was noted that the stall dimensions currently do not meet the standard. I believe the dimensions that were provided on the plan were 18 by 9. The code does require 20 by 10 with exception to those parking spaces that allow for an overhang where they can be 18 by 10. So that would be something that would just get worked out within the preliminary plat details. We got vague landscaping on the concept plan. I think a more detailed plan will be required, and that would include the additional landscaping for the outdoor storage fence area. And I believe that is, it was 5 shrubs per 100 feet of fence and then 1 tree per 100 feet of fence or something like that. So that would be the addition on top of a standard landscape requirements. Measuring the wetland buffer that was shown, the shown buffer on the concept plan does not currently meet the 25-foot wide average. Now, it does meet the minimum 10 feet that you can go, but they'll have to revise that plan accordingly to show that they can meet that 25-foot average across that wetland on the southwest of the property. Here's just a note on the future applications that the Planning Commission and City Council would expect to see with a proposal like this. Depending on your conversations today, that could include a variance for some of these circumstances, or it would be addressed as an ordinance amendment prior to something like this coming forward. At this time, from our understanding, the applicant has intended that they are not requesting a planned unit development, so that is the direction that we will plan for those flexibilities. So the role of the Planning Commission tonight is to review the concept plan, discuss it, and offer input of any desired changes or improvements. We did post notice for a public hearing for this and sent mailed notice out to property owners within a quarter mile. And just a note, all comments are advisory and non-binding, and the staff is not asking for any action on this item today.
All right. Any questions or clarifications from staff? All right, with that, it is 7:27. I will open the public hearing. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Sure.
For maybe some questions or clarifications from the commission?
I'm also going to give you pictures of what's in the outdoor storage, and you can share most of those. My name's Tim McShane, McShane Development. I'm a development consultant for the owner here, Mark Muller, with Telcom and also Roger Zopp. You can explain that in a moment. Would you like my address?
Yeah, please.
6975 Foxglove Circle, Excelsior, Minnesota.
Thank you.
You want to do so?
Yeah, it'd be Mark Muller. The actual owner of the building and the property would be my wife, Susan Muller, but I am the chief executive officer for the company, so I could speak for the company. It's basically an LLC. And then I am the president of Telcom Construction, which would be the construction company that would be utilizing the property. So my address is 24128 County Road 160, St. Joseph, Minnesota.
Any questions for the applicant?
I guess in general, just maybe it would help Hayden if we threw the site plan up there. Just more in general, so we've got the outdoor storage up on the paved outdoor storage up by the entrance. I'm assuming that's going to be more the fleet vehicles and stuff like that we're seeing in here, and then the track machines are what would be going back on the gravel and trailers and stuff like that.
Yeah, I can respond to that.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Yeah, when you look in there, we don't have what I consider large equipment. If you go to RDO and you look at any of the track equipment, the work that we're going to be doing here doesn't require an abundance of that, but it does require it. Like you can see in there, the dozer size is smaller, so it'd be like if you guys did a roundabout in one of your areas, and then we took, one of those quad track plows, which is in there, and you plowed around that and replaced the cables and stuff for the utility companies. A lot of times we'll track that down with a dozer, or if we got to dig a trench, then we backfill it with that dozer. So you're not into a highway heavy situation. The cabs on there are not, you're not 12 feet in there. It's not a D8 or anything like that. And yes, it'd be a lot of most of the trucks that'll be in there would be probably F350, F150, F250. It's kind of the main class in the yard itself. And then, so if that answers your question there.
Then the building would just be used for maintenance of the equipment and the office area.
Maintenance and storage.
And storage.
Yeah, so there'd be a shop area, and there'd be a fair amount of storage inside there too, a fair amount.
Is there going to be any storage of like cable, stuff that you guys actually install on the site too? And
Yeah, copper we keep inside.
why?
It seems to have its own path someplace. We don't know quite where, but yeah, it disappears. But it's actually kept us quite busy because we replace the stuff they steal between manholes or the aerial stuff they cut down, so it keeps us busy. So a lot of it's fiber reels, and those reels are 7 foot, and we're proposing an 8-foot fence that's screened. And like some of our other properties, we went with an 8. We have less issues there. And 90% of the stuff you can't see really inside that fence when it's screened. And this elevation is up higher too. So most is, like from, I guess it's French Lake, I mean, it'd be pretty tough to really see anything up in there. And also from the other street. And
Do you guys have any materials storing on site, any other type of gravel, dirt, any kind of like pea gravel, anything like that for your job?
Typically not. Some of it's bagged now. Your pea rock that you put in the beds is bagged. Occasionally we might have something there that they load up or whatever and switch from truck to truck, but we're not saving, I guess, what I call bituminous materials around there at all. We're not setting up like a landscape company with big beds.
So
That's not what we do.
of the commission members, I'm probably most familiar with your guys' operation. You're installing like handholds that are probably yay big.
30 by 36 is an average size.
Yeah, yay big. And then you got boring equipment that goes between, or you're doing an excavation because there's another construction project adjacent and they're going to do the restoration. You're not doing
Yeah,
the
we get the
restoration.
cables out of the way so that
Yeah.
they could do the road construction projects. And then we do a lot of, we do emergency type work too. Restoration, car hits a pole, car hits a pedestal. We go out and we fix that stuff within the community to get service back up for everybody's internet, is what we do.
Is it fair to say with the cable reels, just thinking about outdoor storage here, so you always just put them on, you don't stack them, so it's not 7
No.
feet where you potentially go higher?
No,
So
cable reels,
besides
if
equipment,
you lay them flat and stack them, which you can do with some of the power cables, but they'll overlash in there, and then when you flip them up and try and pull it off, it's kind of that mess.
yeah.
So, no.
So
you
besides
never-
equipment, really nothing's going to be sticking above the fence?
No, we got some like bucket trucks, that are, they get up there 12,
Yep.
12 and a half, 13 feet. But, if they're kept behind that building, I don't know where or how you'd really see them
Yeah.
unless you were
Yeah.
literally looking.
In the front outdoor storage area, is there anything that's going to be over the 8-foot fence?
I can't remember what we put in the plan there, but, like what you're saying, if you start stacking pallets and things like that.
Well, yeah, I think of more of vehicles or there's backhoes or bucket trucks or anything.
No, the bigger stuff, where the intent is to be in the back there.
Okay.
And then our bigger trucks with the drills, that we leave the drill on there, but, we need to back them off once in a while. The smaller ones do have a rubber track, but the larger ones you can get into a steel track, and that's where we got to get off and turn and shift quite a bit back there. That's why we're proposing that area there. And that area there, I wouldn't put gravel in there. I'd put class 2.
I was wondering.
You don't have the dust,
Yeah.
and we have chloride, to keep any of the dust or situations away. So it's just a better material to use, and we get less potholing or anything like that with it too.
So, I guess a question I hand here is, how the commission might address this gravel area in the future, right? So these guys come back, they get their the preliminary plat, the conditional use permit for outdoor storage, and then a request to convert some of the outdoor storage to gravel instead of the hard surface requirement. So it's the idea of what do we do when that comes forward? Hayden, I think you hit it on the head. It's either going to be a planning and development, or if they don't want to do that, then it's either the variance or an amendment to the ordinance to allow that to happen, right? And there's no other option because of the fact that it is in the ordinance that says it has to be hard surface. They're requesting it not to be. So then you come back to the fact, okay, if it's a variance, what are those hardships? We just went through a variance request previously here, and I mean, I think it would be hard to justify, in my opinion anyway, approving a variance when there's no building on the land. It wasn't a previous situation. This is a request by the owner for a specific reason, but it's still not in compliant with the ordinance. So I would hate to say that that you'd probably have to lean more towards the amendment to the ordinance to allow it. A PUD probably would help with that situation. A variance, I think, would be the harder of the three to get approved, in my opinion, anyway, just for those reasons. I understand your situation. I understand the need for it and the want to not have to dig up or, break down the asphalt material with heavier equipment, especially with the tracking on it. The ordinance as it's written right now is just not supportive of that right now.
So I think, and I think Darren, you mentioned this in the previous conversation, we have to also think about what the intent of the ordinance is.
Correct.
And the intent of the ordinance, in my mind, on a gravel outdoor storage is two things: not to be a nuisance to neighbors with dust and types of material. I think we can address that. The other one is to not track gravel onto or out of their parcel. I think they're addressing that one significantly with the way this property is designed. Even if they had a F-350 back there with mud tires on it, it's not going to, the gravel's going to be gone before they hit 121st. So I think, in my mind, I get what you're saying, Jeff. We do have to address it. I think we also have to think about what the intent of the ordinance is, and it's to prevent that gravel from leaving their site.
Yeah, I actually asked staff before the meeting via email what the intent of, or what's the purpose of a hard surface outdoor storage requirement, right? So some communities it's purely aesthetic. We just don't want to see gravel because after a while it's going to get in landscaping, it's going to fall over the streets, whatever it is. Some communities, understand that outdoor storage, you might be storing things that leak and, that are rusty or that, maybe aren't materials that should be on gravel because of the leaching into the soils type of situation. So I don't know if we want some of Jason's input on that as well, as far as, runoff on this property, how it's going to affect holding ponds and things of that nature, if there's ways of mitigating that runoff before it gets to those, or treat it before it gets to those holding ponds. I mean, that's what the holding ponds are there for too. But, so I guess that was a question I had too. So, if the direction of the city really is, as the chair was saying, hey, it's about the control of the dust and all that stuff too, and we find that it's going to meet those requirements. I mean, that's a little bit more palatable for me, but the ordinance was written for a reason.
Yep.
And, right now the applicants are asking for a variance to that, and we need to have a pretty good rationale to say yes, in my opinion.
From a PUD perspective, could this get approved without a variance?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not against the variance. So one most important thing you probably guys get on this is the feedback of what we're going to say, but more importantly, the council even on this to see what direction you should go. I'm not opposed to a variance, but I'm much more in favor of a PUD. Variances just create headaches and track records and history that sometimes you just want to avoid if you can. One other thing, Jeff, to the spirit of the code, is part of it is high-quality development, and I think that this is meeting that criteria all day long, especially if they're putting Class 2 in over gravel. It's even more. They're just doing what they're doing because of the equipment that they're working with.
So I was just note for the planning commission, they've seen planned unit developments before, but just wanted to note that there are a couple other additional caveats that come with a planned unit development request, and that is identifying some sort of public improvement or public benefit related to the development proposal. So that would be something that would kind of have to be worked out between staff and the applicant and the planning commission and city council throughout that process. And as I mentioned before, you know, the outdoor storage is subject to a conditional use permit regardless. I'm just posing a question to the planning commission. Is this an instance where a conditional use permit can kind of hash out those standards for the surfacing requirements rather than just having a blanket statement? And
I think it can, but I also don't want every applicant to come forward with 100% gravel.
That would likely
And
be
then
something that may
That
happen.
would happen, and then we have to make a decision all the time, so.
I guess a comment and question. So when this project comes through, it's going to require a site plan review. Typically with a site plan review, there's a little bit of leeway on the ordinance. So for example, if the project requires 100 trees and they can only fit 99, we're not going to require a variance for 1 tree. So there's a little bit of leeway on there where it's practical for what the applicant is asking for. I guess my question for the applicant is, do you need this much gravel? Like how many track vehicles do you have or do you anticipate having here? Like is that whole area going to be for track vehicles and maneuvering?
No,
Okay.
it's, you're gonna turn around and unload. Yeah, we could sacrifice some of the footage there if that was your wishes, It's really the unloading piece and then turning to get, because, just like, how are we gonna get in the shop and not wreck asphalt? Well, we pad it up there, right? Is what we do, is pad it up there. But that doesn't work very well unloading and then just getting it in place in nice rows. That but to answer your question of how many tracks, I mean, you're talking limited 4 or 5, 6 would be a lot. Because that's not, most of the equipment is staying on a trailer and going back out to work the next day.
Sure.
So
So is it more of the weight of the vehicles or the tracks themselves that you're?
the tracks themselves,
Okay.
yeah, they're rough on.
But they're not hitting the ground too often is what I'm hearing.
Well,
They're on trailers, they're unloaded, they're back on a trailer, or sometimes we just stay on a trailer to be brought back out site the next day.
Yeah,
Okay.
but when we do need to unload them and,
Okay.
we're not gonna use them that week or something, we'll take them off the trailer so we can use the trailer to haul something else.
Right. I mean, this isn't a situation where they're daily driving up and down the asphalt area on the outdoor storage, right? I mean, it's
No.
minimum maneuvers to get them on and off of trailers.
I mean, and I don't know your guys' operation, I know others, I'm guessing you're probably unloading a track, 3 times a week? Depending on how many you have in the crews and what they're doing, but
Yeah.
so if 15 times a week, if you just got 5 of them.
But you're 100-degree day, that thing's
Right,
sinking
you're
into
gonna-
the asphalt
you're
too,
gonna
if
wreck
it's
the
heavy enough, right,
asphalt.
with tracks too,
Yeah.
so I get that also.
And knowing, I mean, understanding what else he's got going on and
Yep.
maneuvering between deliveries of cable and other trailers coming in and out, the larger site gives him more flexibility to maneuver
For
that
sure.
versus having a smaller dedicated area. And close to the shop from how much you have to pad.
Yeah, and it was brought up too, the area outside the fence between there and the neighboring properties. I don't have the exact number, but it's somewhere between 2.5 and 3 acres of barrier between there. And it's lower, so when we put that 8-foot fence up, it'd actually be hard from the other side of that 3 acres to really see in there either, so, for the elevation. I think somebody was asking that question.
I mean, so this is a concept plan, so we don't have to give any guidance, just comments tonight. I think the track area is one we have, from my understanding, we have a little bit of concern over, but maybe a little reduction in size wouldn't hurt, but and material type would be good to know when it comes back.
I think the other question that came up that Hayden brought up that we should maybe provide a little guidance on is how do people feel about it abutting the residential guided district? I don't think it's a big deal, but I don't fully understand how we need to work with our code and our comp plan to execute it. And because I think you mentioned there was a little bit of room, like, well, it's abutting a wetland, and I'm like, well, how do we interpret this? So.
This is a very unique parcel for that too, because it's an industrial area that just happens to have one little pot of guided residential next to it, right?
And we approved outdoor storage on it already.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it wasn't to this extent, but it was outdoor storage.
So I have a couple thoughts on that. The applicant brought up a good point. I mean, this is a large area of buffer that he is leaving between the two, albeit some of it is wetland. Maybe as you look to reduce the gravel area, maybe that little triangle could be reduced, and there's a little bit more there, a little sacrifice. I have no problem with it. This is residential area, but it is not I don't want to discourage our residents who live in mobile homes, but it's not a single family neighborhood. It is a more of a multifamily area that, has tenants, not long-term people building houses to live in. And it's area that's not developed yet today.
And within that 3 acres, there's probably an acre and a half that's on the outer rim of that.
Yep.
That are tall trees you can't see through.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't have any issues either. I mean, whatever needs to be done as far as the comprehensive plan, if it's just a guidance or if it's a suggestion in the language actually that's saying that outdoor storage shouldn't be next to, is that from the comp plan or is that in the
That's the zoning ordinance, but it doesn't connect residentially zoned properties. It's focused on land use guidance in the comp plan.
Gotcha, okay.
So, I mean, currently, I think this property is now a zoned manufactured home park, but it not specifically related to the zoning, it's the land use. Now, whether if the general intention for the outdoor storage not abutting residential was originally thought, the planning commission and city council was thinking, well, we don't want it against low density single family housing.
That's not what it says though.
That's not what it
I
says.
think it's easy to interpret as just residential period.
Yeah.
Just figure out what we need to do.
Currently that's what it is, but that could be a distinction made by way of ordinance amendment for.
And I guess seeing the overlay on this with the aerial underneath, question for the applicant, I mean, are you intending to leave some of those trees in those areas, or is that not thought out yet?
That'll just stay natural, untouched.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
And most of it's already been cleared out, Peter. I don't know if they started with the prior applicant, but they kind of carved it all out already.
understood, but if you compare that image to what he has up there, you can see some of the trees underneath that are shown in here.
Yeah, you're talking these trees, right?
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah, this is going to be.
So there's no additional clearing.
Oh yeah, I'll just note too that a tree inventory would be a part of the preliminary plat application for our review to understand whether there are any significant or heritage trees proposed to be taken down with this development. That would essentially include requirements for minor reforestation, if you will.
I mean, that would be on the biggest thing I think on, there's 2 areas on this site that seem to make sense that if we need to add more trees to it, it's adjacent to it's adjacent to French Lake Road would be the biggest one in my mind, and then the second would be to address the future expansion of the mobile home park on that side.
And I think one thing we could do too is when we put a condition in there for the conditional use permit for the outdoor storage, the condition would maybe be for the asphalt area that's obviously going to be a lot closer, the most closest outdoor storage to it, is that it is limited to trucks, F-150s, F-350s, et cetera. It's not for parking trailers with equipment on, like they're supposed to be parked in the back, which I think is what you said you're going to be doing anyway.
So if we could say the outdoor storage is not going to exceed the height of the fence.
Yeah.
In particular for the
paved
In the
area.
paved area,
Yeah.
not the rear.
Yeah,
I'm not sure I understand.
He's talking about
so I don't care what's parked there as long as it doesn't exceed the height of the fence.
I'm more saying as a condition to,
Yeah.
since we're abutting residential.
Yeah,
Oh, you mean whatever's stored in that little
Yeah.
area there?
yeah.
Make it limited to the trucks.
Oh, yeah, they'd be smaller trucks.
Yeah. Yeah, so
that's not a problem.
Right, because then it's not much different than a parking lot.
That's why it's designed the way it is.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I was kind of
Because I'm
thinking.
looking at supervisors and,
Yeah.
that type of stuff would, be along that part of
Yeah.
the building.
Yep. But that could be a condition that we use to help mitigate concerns too.
I think however we look at outdoor storage, we always have to make sure we have some flexibility because every property is so different and the neighbors are different and what's being stored is so different, how they want to screen it and all that, right? So whether it's variances or CUPs, PUDs, like I'm going to leave that up to staff to say what the best use is for each property, but we just need flexibility to be able to provide feedback and guidance on how to best manage that. I think in this case, like, you guys, like, go more gravel. I couldn't care less. I mean, it's totally fenced in. It's far enough away from the street that, like Peter was saying, the gravel's gonna be knocked off before it gets to the road. Like, as long as the dust is controlled and it works for your function, I'm gonna be a little different than the rest of my companions up here and say, the amount of gravel doesn't bother me at all. What I would have more concern about is that fence going so far up in front of your building, right up to your entry point. You'll have some kind of gate mechanism there, I'm sure, but that's more visible than your building to some extent. I don't know if there's any way to be able to pull that back. If that's for like supervisor parking, if it's just essentially more parking, can you just pull that fence back closer to the line of the
Stuff's
building?
left there for security, and what we were trying to do is utilize the piece of property, because the green stuff there is really, stuff that we're never gonna be able to use
Yeah.
anyways,
Yeah.
because it is
It's
lower.
it's a weird piece of
So
property.
it keeps, but I gotta have a certain amount of space within that fence to have it make sense too, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we were trying to, we can plant more trees there, we can do some other things. That's,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the fence ordinances are for this part of the city, but, usually like in residential, we don't want fences beyond the front of the house, right?
that
Like,
piece there can be a different view of a fence, something a little
A
fancier.
little nicer fence.
What are the requirements? Is it like 80% opacity for screening?
Well, when it's related to outdoor storage, it's 100%.
It's 100%?
Yeah.
So it has to be, whatever you're achieving 100% opacity.
I'm trying to keep everything that would be
Yeah.
overnight,
Yeah.
potentially, inside that fence. That's why, you see the two different parking areas. The right side would be more like office staff
Yep,
coming and
yep,
going. And, you'd have some supervisors out there too, right, coming and going.
Yeah, so I understand Paul's concern is that you're creating a wall at that point. It's not really a fence. And so what does that wall look like in relation to the building, right? So.
Well, it doesn't go to the end of that parking lot. It ends here,
Right.
so it's just this distance here.
I think,
And the parking area there is for the employees that are the field people that come and go, come in
Yeah.
the morning and go.
so, and maybe a concession, and you guys obviously have to refine this and present what works for you. Just in my mind, looking at this, if you could shift that fence, plan south one parking stall, and maybe even shift some of the end parking that's on the far west side in front of your fence, if that makes sense. Does what I'm talking about make sense, or should I?
Makes sense to me, yeah. Yeah, you shift
I
the
can
line
get up there and
south
show it.
parking
I think
in
he's
front
got
of
it.
it or
He's got it.
something.
I think you're talking about here.
Yeah, just
and
shift-
over here.
And then
bring it to the
maybe
south.
shift 5 more stalls in there and take them out of the end,
take some asphalt off the end and,
It might, if, as you guys program this space, it might not only be cheaper because you're actually creating less asphalt if you take some out of the west end.
Take some off of here, move some of these stalls in front of this,
Like 6 stalls is all I'm talking about.
and then just bring this gate right over here,
Yeah,
right?
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Some-
you're losing a little bit, but you're also,
Something to consider, and maybe that would help your concern, Paul, of
Yeah, I mean,
pulling it back
just
just a little bit.
I think
protection of that fence too. I mean, even if you're parking in front, you gotta do some kind of curb or something to keep it from getting hit, but like, that fence is like, I can imagine all your employees are coming in with big pickup trucks and like, it's gonna get hit at some point, so like, just what's it gonna look like and maintenance for it, and, even where it cuts across the front diagonal parking there close to the building, like can your car actually, like where 7 and 11 are numbered there for the number of stalls, like how does a car get in and out of those stalls? The fence actually might need to move to the other side of that island in order
Well,
for
we
a
can
car
move
to
that
back
fence
in
to the
and out,
left
right?
there a little bit in that
Yeah.
green space there,
Yeah.
just move it out.
Well,
a little bit.
and
That's
that,
not a big deal.
I mean, and that's maybe one of my other comments was, you have a lot of green space on the east side inside the storage area. And so, to my point of,
Yeah, you can
shifting
shorten
that
the
fence
fence up a
back,
little bit.
maybe make your parking space a little bigger on the inside, but throw that green space on the outside, it might just help with aesthetics.
yeah, and think of a cost-effective way too to maybe make that part of the fence a little bit more attractive than the rest of it.
Okay.
Question here, so, I'm thinking of, or for Mark, the area that's identified as outdoor storage in the front, you had mentioned that that's typically going to be more for supervisor vehicles that are traveling, so I'm interpreting this as
Which area?
in front of the building,
The one-
within the fenced area.
Yeah, that's office staff and, or in the fenced area?
In the fenced area.
Where
Right there.
Jason's pointing.
Yeah, if we're leaving trucks, I got some trucks, I keep extra trucks.
No, I
Because
understand.
they crash them a lot.
But we're talking about, they're trucks, not
They're work
big
trucks.
trucks.
You're not gonna have a semi sitting
These
there,
are
no.
pickups.
Yeah. No, that's why the back is for anything larger.
Do they need to be screened? I mean, I understand the idea of securing them, but would it make sense, rather than like a chain link fence with like a tarp around it, of having like more of a wrought iron, 8-foot fence, security fence?
That's.
And you're saying pull the storage fence to basically to the building line, John?
I was just trying not to
Yeah.
have where anybody can really see in there. And, the other thing is too, when you look at the road there with the trees we're planting across there, in a couple of years, you're not gonna be able to see any of it anyways.
Yeah.
It'll all be behind there.
So part of the idea, I'm thinking of, you're trying to hide something that doesn't need to be hidden.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of creating the invitation of, when you're hiding something that someone that's looking to steal something wants to look over the fence when they can look through it and see there's nothing there to get into.
Yeah.
I can imagine work trucks though are a pretty big target for people looking to steal stuff. There's lots of
Yeah.
compartments in those trucks
Especially
and
with
lots
the
of tools.
sawzall, they crawl underneath.
And loose stuff and
Yeah.
So John, just so I understand, were you saying keep the fence but don't have it opaque?
Yeah, just
Maybe
So
have
there
it,
was still
Like
security?
a wrought iron.
Yeah.
then-
So there was still security?
right.
Yeah.
But would that require an opaque fence somewhere along the building face?
Well, I mean,
Back up the
the
building.
equipment that's behind the building should be screened.
Okay.
And I don't think that's an issue.
Yeah,
It's
and the
more
whole
of,
west-facing fence should be screened, opaque. It's the,
Right.
You're talking the
north
one
facing.
on 121st.
yes, it's having what I think of as a chain link and a fabric screen across it isn't very attractive when it's in the front yard of a building.
Yeah, I just didn't think you maybe want to be able to see in and see a road.
there's a lot of different materials you can use to make it opaque
Yeah,
too, that check
we
them
will
out,
do
because
that.
there might be something that is a
Yeah,
good compromise.
There's no issue with that. Like I said, there's gonna be plenty of
I just
trees
think
on
of
the
the
front.
fence that was put up along Zanzibar, right up against the road.
Yeah, you don't want that?
It
Looks
has been
terrible.
desirable or undesirable?
Undesirable.
Undesirable.
And
Okay.
this is set back a little bit, but it's still a fence in the front yard.
Yeah, and I
Which
think,
your business has to run, but I also, fences in the front yard bother me a little bit.
Yeah, I think the more you
And
can make
the
a,
property is challenging, so I get it.
It is challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We covered parking, we covered buffer, we covered gravel. Any other feedback for the applicant at this point?
Looks like the building's been designed for 4 tenants. Is that like future proofing?
Yeah, that's future, just a multi-tenant,
Yeah.
flexibility for 10, 15 years down the road,
Yeah.
Yep.
basically.
And just a point, but the CUP for outdoor storage will run with the property, so if you ever sell it, just FYI, an owner might have to comply with whatever the code is at that time for outdoor storage.
Or they'd have to comply with the specific conditions that are imposed on the conditional use permit, right? So there might be very specific conditions we impose for you and your business.
The next owner
The
won't
next
have to
owner-
apply because they're going to have to apply for a new CUP,
Yeah.
which might mean different standards.
They wouldn't need to apply for new CUP.
If they need.
Unless they're enlarging it or changing
Yes.
it in some manner that would require that,
Yeah.
so, right, so
They
that's.
want to change it,
Yep.
but otherwise they wouldn't have to.
Yeah, the big condition might be, like, for example, say they don't have tracked vehicles, and the condition is that the gravel storage is used mainly for tracked vehicles.
Right. And I could see a condition of approval being that the gravel area should be used, primarily for the tracked vehicles, or something along those lines.
Yeah, I wouldn't say
so that we
exclusively,
can-
but-
I mean, if you want to recommend downsizing it some, maybe 10% or something too, I mean, I'll do it if that's what you want.
Yeah, I think it's more about how we work with the code
Okay.
to make it work.
I guess maybe the feedback on that is to work with staff to come up with the conditions that would work for you guys right now and to somewhat future-proof it from
Yeah,
your
because our big
perspective.
goal is, working with Tim and the architects and the engineers is trying to design something that you really don't know it's a construction company by driving
Right.
by, because if you look at, I understand, the building, we're putting the extra in to make sure it has that look and is as nice or nicer than the, adjoining buildings. And, we're trying to avoid, where you get situations where it's visible for big trucks running around and big shed doors open all day and all that type of stuff that's going on. I think they've done good in coaching me on designing something that eliminates probably 95% of that.
Can we keep the back the same size as shown and just push some of the parking that's up front back so we can move that fence? All right, so instead of taking that triangle out of the bottom storage area, keep that and
Just
move
throw a few trucks back
use some of that truck parking into the back and reduce the fence in the front. No, something to consider when you're finalizing the site plan.
Mark, you understand what he's saying?
Yeah.
I guess a question for staff, and this is totally on you guys too, but if they're keeping fleet vehicles out front overnight, does that need to be enclosed for our outdoor storage?
Enclosed, no.
So fleet vehicle,
It becomes outdoor storage.
it's outdoor storage still, but it does not need to be enclosed because of what it is, or?
It's a CUP for outdoor storage. So I don't know.
I guess my interpretation of outdoor storage probably would not include parking spaces dedicated for employee purposes. And that would probably include the vehicles, the fleet vehicles for the company. I guess that would be my interpretation, is that might not even be considered.
I would say, normal passenger types of vehicles, so if it's the F-150s, 250s, 350s that are equipped for this business, that even if they have a boom on them or whatever it is, I've seen ordinances that do allow that, but then also have to take those parking stalls into consideration to be an additional to the minimum code requirements for the regular performance of that property, right? So if you have a fleet of vehicles that are all the same, they could park not included as the outdoor storage area that need to be fenced and screened and all that. But if they're taking up parking, then those are not included in the overall parking requirements of the remainder. But I think we could work through that through the CUP.
Yeah, and, when I line up the extra trucks or whatever, that we need, or say they're not gonna be used for a little bit. You know, you got a concern of catalytic converters
Oh, yeah.
being stolen.
Yep.
I mean, we go through, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, so I gotta try and protect that situation, and it happens really fast, really quick. And on video, they're good at rolling all the way through the lot and never stand up and roll from truck to truck to truck, and they drag that stuff out of there. So I need to protect that asset. you
Yeah,
know?
I'm not telling you to park your trucks outside the fence, I get
Yeah.
it, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
whatever we can do to pull that fence into the property farther.
Yeah, and what I'm trying to avoid, some people give a yard, and then all of a sudden the field employees all of a sudden park inside the yard, and it's
Right.
kind of a mess of what you maybe don't want, and what I'm trying to do is just do it the right way, and put them out there so they can come and go freely, and not be storing cars out
And-
there.
And keep in mind, some of my questions are to also future-proof things that come forward, right? Someone might be coming forward, or some of our questions, I should even say, someone might be coming forward and with a very similar development, but they don't care about their fleet. So I'm asking that question of the staff in case someone's educating themselves,
Oh,
not to
okay.
challenge you guys,
Yeah,
so.
Gotcha.
yeah, no, I didn't take it that as a challenge with me.
Anything else for the applicant?
I'm good.
All right.
Yeah, I'm good. Do you
Thank
guys
you.
have any questions for us?
Any-
You feel like you got everything answered?
No, I think we got some
I
good
only
insight.
have one.
No.
You want them here, correct? Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely.
I'm on for it.
We got good
Love to
working
see it.
class employees,
Are you moving your business here, or are you expanding?
We have part of the Blaine operation I'd like to move here. We have a lot of the work is on this side of the metro. You got some of the fiber companies coming into the communities and expanding, and there's grants and different things, and a lot of them are our customers. So I give a better customer service at the same time, which allows them, if I'm in the area, better service for their customers, quicker response, all those sort of things.
Well, you
And-
save on transportation, and you're also gonna create, what,
Yeah.
80 jobs-ish?
Yeah, and,
Something like that?
if driving from Clearwater doesn't make any sense to the West Metro, it's just a waste of fuel for everybody. And
Especially if
the
they're
traffic's
coming back
bad
out.
enough already, without putting another 80 trucks out there, right?
Yeah.
So, but I like the community, like the older gentleman said earlier, I've been in the community. I haven't lived here, but I've worked in this area all my life. So I've been out plowing service drops to homes in the area and different things too, so. But it is a nice area, well respected, so we'd like to contribute to that community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
All right, this is a public hearing, we did open it. Anyone here for the public hearing on this item? Anyone online?
If you'd like to speak during this public hearing, feel free to use the raise your hand function on Zoom.
All right, with that, we will close the public hearing at 8:09. No motions needed, so we'll move on to.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 8C. Dayton Interchange Business Center preliminary plat site plan review.
You're leaving the oxygen for me? What do you think I came here to watch you?
Too far. Okay. So again, this is Dayton Interchange Business Center, a preliminary plat and site plan review. The project is located on, I'm going to refer to, well, I'm going to say Territorial Road, but it's Territorial Road west of County Road 81. So the nearest intersection would be Territorial Road and, is it Holly? Holly or Dayton Parkway?
Holly and Territorial
Yeah.
together right there.
All the better kind of oversized map. The project is proposing to subdivide 2 lots into one 14-acre lot and to construct a 126,000 square foot office warehouse. This is a speculative building. The property is zoned I-1 light industrial. Critical issues with this is trailer storage along County Road 81 is prohibited, the building design, and then landscaping standards. Yes.
You didn't mean trailer storage was prohibited, you meant dock doors were. Or not sure.
I'll say there's an error in the staff report that refers to dock storage, and I'm struggling to find this in the ordinance exactly. I believe, and I've not found this, is that we don't allow, or the intention is not to allow dock storage adjacent to arterial roadways, which includes County Road 81.
Dock doors?
I think it's dock doors, specific more so to the trailers in front of dock doors, because that becomes outdoor storage once it exceeds a certain size. So it's kind of a convoluted way of getting there, but the end product is that there's more outdoor storage than what the code allows. So the question is do you want to allow it on 81 or push it to the front of the building on territorial? And it's kind of subjective to what the Planning Commission, what the council wants, and what you want to see or what you want to hide. This project was previously approved in 2022. The project was not built because the market shifted, and so the owner just kind of took a pause onto it. The market has improved, and so they'd like to move on with the project, although previous approvals have expired. So we're kind of starting the process over again. The 2022 approved project did have the building where the building faced County Road 81 and the dock doors were facing territorial. The new plan for 2024 flips the building where the building faces territorial road and the dock doors face County Road 81. So within the dock doors and in the packet, are elevation drawings. There's and I don't remember what the number is, but there are dock doors and as well as knockout doors or knockout walls. So those walls can be knocked out to create additional dock doors. And I believe the total number, I want to say it was like 44 if I remember correctly. I have to look at the plan again. And then there's an addition of parking for 14 trailers that are highlighted in yellow. So the overall question is it appropriate or not appropriate to have trailer storage along County Road 81? Keep in mind that in between County Road 81 and the trailer storage, there's a railroad right-of-way. So the distance varies a little bit. So the distance from the paved portion of the road to, I believe it's this area of the trailer storage is around 250 feet at a minimum. And then it gets wider as you go north and west. For reference, these are panoramic views. This site here is roughly where the building would be shown. So the idea is you do have existing trees along the railroad right-of-way that screens the property. On the south side, for reference, this is the Turbine Pro building or the Opus building, which was approved with dock doors and trailer storage facing 81. So just for reference, the question is, with the Opus building, is this what you were thinking it would be, or is this something that you would not want to repeat with the Scannell building? This is an overall reference of projects that are more recently built but don't show up on aerial photos. So again, this is the subject property for the Scannell site. This is the Opus property, and then we have Quick Trip here that's currently under construction. And then the yard to the south is Semstone. Across the road, there is the 13th Avenue industrial area, and then struggling with the names here. Stensley. The Stensley property, which is guided as mixed use, we've had proposals both for multifamily as well as industrial uses. So, when you think of, who is looking or facing this property, it could be residential or it could be industrial. If you want to go through these critical issues one by one, or do you want me to go through all this and then come back again? I'll summarize this.
Sounds good.
I can tell you, this is exciting stuff. With industrial projects and business projects, there's kind of a laundry list of items. So in this case, when we're talking about the design of the building, the architecture, the design is required to meet 3 of the following 7 items. The check marks on here are what staff believes the building meets, but it's subjective to how we interpret it. So staff is looking for confirmation from the planning commission if you agree with this or not. And I'll come back to this in more detail again. And then 3 is landscaping standards. The project meets the landscaping standards other than the ornamental trees are missing. So the code does require a certain number of ornamental trees based on the property size. In this case, it's 92 trees. There is sufficient space to meet it or to plant those. It's just a question of where. So again, with the critical areas, the first one is trailer storage or outdoor storage.
We've already approved Opus with trailer parking and dock doors facing the intersection of Dayton Parkway and 81, so I don't see any difference here where we've got, we're kind of even tucked in behind it a little bit. I don't have a problem with the shift. I mean, the front of the building facing the primary entry road makes sense to me from a flow standpoint and safety of pedestrian cars, not mixing with the tractor trailers as much either, so they can come in and get to their parking right away. So I don't have a problem with the orientation of the building.
I'd be curious to hear from the applicant, but just looking at the building, I think that the utility and functionality of the building's improved by how they presented it this time versus the other way. So I'd echo Paul's comments of why I don't have a problem with it. I'd also add to it, I don't know if Paul mentioned it, but there's a railroad track that separates us between 81 too. That's going to always be some sort of overgrown vegetation that acts as a buffer.
That's true.
I mean, I'll echo both those. I think the flow of the interior flow of the property works better with the front of the building facing territorial. Personally, I'm not 100% enamored with the trailer parking. I understand the dock door need to be facing 81. The trailer spaces being that close, there's no other real place for them on the property. Perhaps some of those trees that are missing could help buffer that area too with some screening. I get the fact that it's against the railroad right away that's going to have that natural overgrowth, which is going to help with screening as we see here in the current situations for these new buildings too. So yeah, not saying that I'm not supportive. It's just it's not the best place for me anyway for that trailer storage, but I think there's no other great place on the property for it. So
I wonder if it just shifts left in the plan and swaps with that stormwater retention area. Just it gets deeper into that triangle, or you can get more landscaping on the other side of it or something. But I'm not overly concerned about it.
So so again, it'd be shifting the trailer storage to the left and then moving the stormwater pond to the right.
Yeah.
Were there any topographical needs for having the storage pond there as far as elevation changes or anything like that? Is it the natural low spot or?
Yeah. It's the convenient spot. I guess we haven't looked close enough to see if it could be shifted or not, but that is the natural place it would want to be.
I mean, shifting it over 20 feet or 50 feet or whatever it is, it's not going to make a huge difference with people flying by on 81, so, I mean, the only other consideration is the use across the street for future use, but there's enough buffer, I think, between whatever development happens there, 81, the tree, all the natural trees that are there anyway, with the railroad too. I think it's not going to be a critical issue, plus the fact you have, Opus right next door.
So, despite we have Opus next door, and we have Cubes, where Cubes you can see the dock doors for days, I am against that aspect to begin with. I think we did ourselves wrong in those two, and 3 wrongs don't, or 2 wrongs doesn't mean we should keep going down that path. I understand the flow and the functionality, but from a pedestrian access, this is not something where people are coming and going all day long. They're coming in the morning, leaving at night, probably not the same times the trucks are leaving, because they're probably the same people leaving with the trucks. As it relates to the parking, I think we should shift that as far to the east or the west as we can, to provide that additional buffer between the rail right away. I mean, that last 2 stalls, the last stall is almost as close to the property line as we can get. I think we even if you can shift it a stall or 2 to the left, would help a tremendous amount. I didn't look at the types of trees being planted in here. I will say that some of the trees that have been planted at Cubes or at Opus and are starting to grow, start to help. If you've driven 81 this year, they did go through and clear everything, so it is very visible right now.
Along the railroad.
Yep. That was pretty recent. And so a lot of that is very clear from what these pictures show. I have mixed opinions on it. I mean, I get the functionality from a business user. I get we did it next door for the other development, but just because we did something one way doesn't mean we should.
But could I ask a question of staff? So what is the rule for? Is it abutting any right-of-way, or is it abutting a street right-of-way, or what's?
Arterial. So generally, 81 would be it'd be County Road 81, I-94, I believe Dayton River Road. I'm not sure if there's others.
So the technical question is, does this property abut 81 right-of-way?
Technical answer is no.
You got railroad tracks.
Right. So, if the property owner has a right to build as they want to build, and it's technically not in violation of the ordinance because of the fact that you're not technically abutting that arterial roadway, you have that railroad right-of-way in between both of them. I'd be hard-pressed to tell him that he can't do what he wants to do as proposed tonight, regardless of what it looks like or anything else. I mean, that's just the letter of the law at that point, in my opinion. I don't know, we don't have our city attorney here either, but maybe we get some direction from our city attorney on that as well.
If there's
as far as interpretation.
if there's enough pushback to flip it back the other way, either by the planning commission or council, I think that we should get some interpretation on that. Because
is there any consensus with the planning commission that you have, no opposition to having the trailers facing on the 81 or the railroad tracks? Like, if there's a consensus, then it doesn't matter.
I'm okay with the design presented tonight. I agree that if we can shift some of those trailer stalls, that helps.
Okay.
But that's my opinion.
I agree.
I mean, I'd have to agree just because it's not technically abutting the county roadway right-of-way. Unfortunately, I mean, that's how it is. Would I rather see the front of the building facing County Road 81? Probably, but in this case, I think we have to take it as is presented and go with that. Making some of those, we could see how shifting those trailer spaces to the, whatever, left on the map is north, is that north? Kind of north, whatever it is.
Northwest, technically.
Push it further into that corner to create more of that buffer. Peter was correct that corner is almost as close to the property line as you could get. I think shifting it over is going to help provide at least a little bit if it works with their stormwater management.
I will go opposite the rest of the commission on if we're abutting 81 right away. I mean, I think the way that was, when we think about the intent of the ordinance and what it entails, I think the railroad running through on 81, it parallels 81 the entire length of the city. So the intent of not abutting 81 is part of that. If we had so that's where I'm going to go on that one. If there's a way to eliminate the trailer parking on the I'll call it the north side, and landscape that and help with the landscape prevention or landscape screening of these, I could concede to allowing this to move forward. I do have a small heartburn with the pinch point between, John, if you move your cursor right, there's a point where there's no landscaping at all, abutting the railroad tracks.
So this doesn't show up on the screen, but there are trees and smaller
that
trees
shows
here.
up there, but
Okay.
further to the right there.
This is a stormwater
Nope,
pond.
between the stormwater pond and what the triangle
Right
you
there.
were just pushing. Yep, that portion of it is the portion that I have some heartburn with as well, but there's not much we can do there from a site side, right? We're limited on land and flow and circulation. Up where the parking stalls are, we can, I think there's some room to move those parking stalls around a little bit. Even if, like I said, if it's one or two, it would help to get another tree in up there. But that area, I just wanted to point out another area of concern of mine. So I might be in the minority on that, but that's okay.
Okay, so the second issue I had was on building design. And again, what I'm looking for is either an agreement or disagreement with staff's interpretation. So again, with the design elements, the building design must include architectural interest through the use of a minimum of 3 of the following elements. So the first is accent materials. So the question I have for the commission is, are there accent materials? Or are there enough accent materials?
Shades of gray. I mean, is accent material different colors of concrete? I mean, because that's all they're doing here, right, is painting concrete, as far as you know? I mean, there weren't renderings or...
There's, well...
there's the one on the end of the packet, I guess.
Do those guidelines specify types of accent materials that might be acceptable?
ECM panels. And they're using metal panels at the entry.
Okay, I can come back to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it meets that.
You think it meets it? Okay. If the commission agrees?
I gotta disagree with the architect.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that one.
So the second item is a visually pleasing front entry that in addition to doors shall be accented a minimum of 150 square feet around the door entrance for single occupancy buildings and a minimum of 300 square feet total for the front of multi-tenant buildings. So this is this could be a multi-tenant or a single tenant. I mean, there's flexibility with it. I'll say I've not measured the width if it's 150 feet or 300 feet. It's, it looks like there is visual separation. It's not just a big shoebox.
I agree.
Okay, item 3, and this doesn't meet as 25% window coverage. Item 4 is contrasting yet complementary material colors. So color scheme is grayscale.
Different shades.
Okay, and that's 3 out of the 7 items. So if there's, if there are other items that you would like to require, you have the option of doing that.
I think maybe the one that I would entertain with the commission, at least the renderings showing what appears to be a white door on the garage door side.
And I don't have that on the screen, but, okay.
Yeah, they're depicted as white.
A gray.
They're not lighted.
Yeah, that'd be.
Yeah.
So you're just saying you'd
You're
like the
looking at
garage
more.
doors to be a similar color to the rest of the building? Is that accurate?
I'm throwing it out there, seeing if the architect agrees. I don't know.
Actually, your drawings do say pre-finished white overhead dock doors. It'd be shocking if a dock door was white. It would not maintain itself very well. So,
My thought is more if we're having dock doors on that side, just have them blend in.
yeah,
That would make sense.
yeah,
to
it
do
would,
that.
it would help with the elevation to just
Paint trees on them.
have them the same color.
Camo.
So you'd like the dock doors to be the same color as the walls? Or a similar color?
I'm even fine with a contrast, but maybe not introduce a new color. Pick one of the colors on the elevation that are shown besides white.
Yeah, I'd say the primary color, right? I mean, the 75% of the loading dock side is all the same color precast, so should match that.
Gray.
Yeah, there's different color gray, so.
PG 142. No, just kidding.
Okay. Other requirements, all principal buildings shall have an entry on a street. So being that this building faces territorial and the front doors are on territorial, that meets it. Item 2 is buildings shall provide a base and a top to their architecture. The top being, I don't remember my architectural,
Like the coping?
there you go.
Base,
I
middle,
was
top?
thinking the freeze, but that's not
Oh,
right.
yeah. Parapet.
So there is a top, and then there is a bottom behind, essentially this line. So does the commission agree?
This is in line with all other manufacturing buildings, industrial buildings that we would see.
Sure. Okay. And then the 2 items that I don't believe that it meets is, item 3, the tops of the building shall be articulated, minimize the box-like image. Everything is the same elevation in the building.
Looks like there's a slight increase.
On the front side, it looks like there's
Very
some
slight.
Yeah,
very
maybe a
slight
foot.
increases.
Okay. And then 4, buildings shall be architecturally unique and shall not be of a corporate architecture, including roof patterns, corporate colors, architectural elements, and similar treatments. So, anything else related to the building design? And then 3rd item is landscaping, in which I don't know why this is missing, but it just needs ornamental trees. Again, this is where I'm looking for recommendation for approval for preliminary plat and site plan review, and it is a public hearing.
All right. I guess with that, it's a public hearing. At 8:35, we will open the public hearing. Would the applicant like to come forward as the first?
Good evening. Mayor, Commissioners, staff, thank you. Long night, huh?
This is a short one.
Not too bad so far.
This is a short one. Well, I've been in longer, but I've been doing this a long time, but yeah, thanks for your efforts. It's a important job. Scott Moe, I'm with Scannell Properties. I live at 9857 Aquila Road, spelled Aquila Road in Bloomington. We covered a lot there. Where would you like to start?
I think a good place to start was just give us your thought process around switching the building from one orientation to the other.
Yeah, first of all, we're trying to stay consistent with the Opus building next door to create that drive visibility, and we think it's a more visually attractive location for tenants to come off the road and have their offices right there versus buried kind of behind and not exposed. So it gives more visibility, better access. They don't have to drive around the building to go in. They come right off the street. It just makes more sense. And quite frankly, by switching the buildings allows us to eliminate some retaining walls, which are quite expensive. And this site requires a lot of it already and still does, but we're able to eliminate some of it. And respectfully, this is a very industrial area. Okay, I mean, we're not talking about a lot of high-end single-family homes around here. You're talking about probably the average speed is 55 miles an hour going both ways by there.
Besides rush hour.
Yeah, there's railroad tracks there, there's vegetation there, and a precedent's been set. We'd like to not be at a competitive disadvantage with our neighboring Opus building, so we'd like to meet that as well. We have no problem sliding over. We probably just put the trailer storage in the middle because logistically it splits, but I don't think we'd have any problem sliding over if there's not some terrain or topical issue in the way, and I don't think there is, but we'd certainly change it. But, and then to address the pinch point thing, we can put some landscaping in there and hide that up a little bit. That's fair and reasonable. And the other thing is, and I don't want to start rumors or anything, but I thought you guys might find this a little bit interesting, is if someday the Semstone site gets redeveloped, and we're not talking to Semstone, they're not interested in selling, anybody's listening, don't start rumors, okay? But someday that's probably going to be a redevelopment site. It seems like it would be right for it at some point in time. And so that site would likely design up something like that if it stays industrial. And by doing this, we've kept all the truck courtyards inside, and we've kept that street frontage facing the street frontage of our building, which would be at the top of the page if you're looking at it. It's across the street from those three buildings. So if you're looking 5, 10, well, probably 10, 20, 30 years down the road, this gets redeveloped, it makes sense to have the buildings all facing into territorial as it gets developed. And so that isn't the major reason to go with this, but if you're thinking down the road, it's not a bad thought. That's about it for that. We spent a small fortune having these buildings designed by professional architects. And, you kind of get into a beauty design, the beholder issue here on colors and this and that, but we believe we've met all the architectural requirements as set forth by the city. We sure as hell spent a lot of money to get that done that way, so I think it does. Would you put a different color scheme in there? Maybe yes, maybe no. Each one of you probably have a different opinion on that, just like your house colors, but I think we met all the architectural design. We do this stuff all over the country. We're the largest privately held developer in the country. We got 40 projects going on in 30 states, so we do this all day, and we know we have to comply, so we intend to. What else can I answer?
Can we go to one of the site plans? Can you just talk through maybe the site plan of what was and what is the retaining walls? Just that wasn't something that I picked up on when I was reviewing these, so it'd just be helpful to know kind of where the retaining walls are?
Yeah, it can't hold me to this, okay? 'cause I
That's
don't remember-
okay.
I haven't, should I get them, kind of point to them?
That
Is
would,
what you're saying?
yeah, that would be helpful.
As, in the plan we're trying to get accepted, there's retaining walls up on the high side here, and there's some retaining walls back in here. And on the plan from before, there was a lot more retaining walls up in here. And I couldn't address it a whole lot more than that right now.
Okay.
Because my partner in this project is a civil engineer by education, so he's taking care of most of that stuff, so I wouldn't want to go on record with too much more than that. It's just that we were able to reduce it enough to make it worthwhile, but that wasn't our primary motivation. It was just kind of a benefit of turning it, and we'll take a little money savings if we can.
I mean, I think it's fair to reason. I mean, public projects look at reducing everything, and retaining walls are a big cost, so I know that.
Yeah.
And
This one's really expensive, how it's set up, and just,
and now that you mention, I mean, the building did shift quite a bit, so I can see why it would have been longer in the first one.
yeah.
It was just helpful to point that out.
A question I have, Scott, and it's a little related to your project, but I think it's a bigger question since you're up here, and I know you guys do a ton of industrial development. Is this building's only 180 feet deep? Generally, people prefer a little bit larger depth. Obviously, your site is what it is. And one of the things that our city is tasked with is another development across the street, and we've gotten some pushback that, they really want the building to be 300 feet deep. That's why we can't run a road by it. What makes a 180-foot building work? Is it?
Yeah, this building is designed to house smaller tenants. For example, it might be the custom cabinet maker that's going to, build cabinets for the housing market in the area. Or it could be the HVAC mechanical contractor. And a lot of those guys like to have drive-ins. We're going to have some drive-in doors back there as well. And this is just designed to be a smaller tenant-type building, 10, 20,000 feet, versus completely apples and oranges. Say that Cubes building, that's meant for the big guys. We do that kind of stuff all over we just finished a 5 million square foot building for Amazon in Connecticut, 5 million feet. 1 million square foot
That's like a hunting
stories.
property.
Yeah, so, we do a lot of that Cubes big box stuff too, but this is just a different market. We think it's a niche that's going to lease quite well, because there isn't a lot of that type of property up here. Even Opus doesn't quite work as well for that, because it's a little bigger, deeper building. They don't divide. If you go to 10,000 feet in their building, you're going to get a bowling alley, or a rifle range, we like to say. So it's just a different building that kind of, we think's got a nice little niche to it, smaller,
Okay.
shallower base.
Thank you. I really don't have much more.
I don't have any more questions.
Jeff?
No, I'm good. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone online? I don't see anyone else here, so.
Feel free to use the raise your hand function if you'd like to speak.
All right. with
Not
that-
seeing anything.
With that, at 8:44, we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? I think it was, from my mind, it was helpful, I'll just call out to the applicant, it was helpful to see a potential for across the road, and maybe, not necessarily change my opinion, but help me understand what flipping it does.
You should have put your building in here, though. Shouldn't have cut it off.
But it was,
You should have had your property in
You
here.
know,
So we could see it.
actually, we should have.
Yeah.
You're right.
it was helpful
though.
to see what it could be, and that, I think just, I echo what I said earlier, is, these little things help inform us on making decisions and how we move forward. It might not change my opinion on how that parking should be, but might change my opinion on the project.
there is no more discussion, and we can obviously have discussion after I make the motion, but I'm going to make a motion to approve the preliminary plat and site plan as presented.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Brown and a second from Sargent. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Just for
Thank you.
clarity, for my purposes, the motion is fine with the trailer storage facing 81 and the building as designed as presented. Okay.
I mean, if we could still work with the applicant to try to shift that trailer
Yeah.
parking a
That's
little
that's
bit.
the only thing I would add.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we can shift that trailer parking.
If the motioner and the second agree.
Well, I don't really want to necessarily make it a requirement. I want staff to work with them, and then it
Yeah.
goes to council. So I don't want to make that a requirement of the motion.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be that it doesn't work with stormwater retention there as well,
Sure.
so.
Yep.
All right. Item 11. Notice and announcement.
Notices and announcements. Most exciting part of the meeting. Okay, staff updates. It's an exciting weekend in Dayton. We have our citywide garage sales. I don't know if any of you guys are participating. I think last meeting I mentioned that this is a great opportunity to sell your previously used or gently used planning commission packets. We are asking that all participants would register with the city, so the reason being is then we have on our website, for anyone that's looking for garage sales, of where those, what dates you're having your sale and what it is that you're offering. So, I believe this is the first time we've had a garage sale organized, so we'll see how that works. Family Fun Night, so June 12th, 5 to 8 p.m. That is next Thursday. So LC Stevens Park will have the Teddy Bear Band. It's a great night, starting at 6:15 p.m. Related to LC Stevens Park, we have a LC Stevens Master Plan update. So the council had appointed a steering committee. Generally speaking, it's an 8-member committee with one person representing the council in each of the advisory commissions, as well as two staff members. The committee has met once. Kind of the next step is to develop a survey or a community survey that's based on the web of what it is that how do you use the park and what would you like to use the park for. So this will go out sometime this summer. I don't know what the date will be. And then we're looking for just kind of feedback from groups of communities. So for example, the River Hills HOA as one example, or other neighborhood HOAs. 13th Avenue and East French Lake Road moratorium. So as I believe the commission is aware, the council did adopt a moratorium for this area. The intention is to develop 2 concept plans for land use and roadway corridors, and then to refine that into a preferred concept. So the main issue with this is where is the east-west corridor going to be? Is it going to be extending 13th Avenue to East French Lake Road as it is, or creating a new road to the north? And then what is the land use, the highest and best use of the land, I'll say east of this wetland complex. So I will send out the commission kind of a blank map if you'd all like to draw different versions on them and send them back to me. That'd be greatly appreciated. It would help Jason and his team at Stantec that's creating the concept plan. Other concept plans. The EDA is reviewing concept plans for the redevelopment of a portion of the old village. The EDA did purchase a 1-acre site generally south of Robinson Street and east of the Crow River. We've had 3 concept plans developed for One, having an event venue, two, having a brewery or an outfitter, and three, having a flex space. And the EDA did review this at their May meeting and gave staff direction to develop a fourth option of just looking at essentially a smaller footprint on that development area. So EDA will talk about it again in June, and I would suspect this will likely go to the council and to the planning commission if of it. I'm assuming that there's going to be interest in this from the commission.
John,
Yeah.
take it this is the property that is not under control of the EDA yet?
Correct. So
These are?
So the area that the EDA owns is this L-shaped property.
Right.
And we have three concept plans that looked at if the city were to acquire the neighboring property, what could it do with it, or can it live without it?
Okay.
Is the river directly to the west of the question mark?
This is the Crow River.
Got it. That's what I was thinking. Okay.
And the DNR boat launch is on the other side of the road here. And I know this is small to see, but it fits on one slide.
Are there floodplain concerns? Because that's going to dictate
Yes.
uses big time when you can't get insurance.
The majority
As
of the
far as what
property
you,
is.
improvements you put on it.
Yeah, so the majority of the property is within the 100-year floodplain. There would have to be some mitigation to make it work. So mitigation is you bringing in fill to bring up the elevation of the building and lowering it elsewhere to provide the same amount of floodplain.
What was that last sentence you just said? Lowering it elsewhere to?
Yeah, so
mitigate?
I like to use the analogy of a bathtub. So you get in the bathtub and the water rises. So
Except-
you
Except
need
there's
to
no
equal
dirt
it.
anywhere else. You got to truck it in.
You could
Well-
dig out the Crow.
You dig out the crow.
So if you bring fill in, you've got to decrease it elsewhere to maintain the same volume of water.
I think the question that everyone needs to be thinking about when you're dealing with a 1.2 acre site, no matter what you put there, is where's everyone going to park?
Yep.
'Cause it's a small site.
Yeah, it's hard to see, but the gray area on each of these is a parking lot.
Outside of the property?
Inside of the property.
That's assuming you control the X though.
Correct.
Yeah. Got it.
Correct.
Okay.
So I'll likely have more detail at the next planning commission meeting. Other things, as four commissioners may know, there's a vacancy in the fifth seat. So we are looking at filling this. I've got a deadline of Monday, June 16th for applications. I've received one so far. Again, this is for what was, I'm going to say convenient about Nick's resignation is that his term expires at the end of June. So whether he had resigned or not, he would have had to reapply. We also have a recent resignation on the EDA, so there is an opening on the EDA as well. If you have anyone that you can think of that would be appropriate for either of these, please reach out to them and encourage them to apply.
So I have a question regarding the planning commission. So is it ordinance that they have to be residents?
Yes.
Okay. Has the city ever considered allowing business owners to be on the planning commission?
Not only if they're residents of Dayton.
So they have to be residents no matter what?
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, something potentially to consider is if, you know, we do have business owners that have, you know, good ideas of what potentially, you know, Dayton could grow into. And sometimes it's really good to get that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I understand completely the rationale to have residents for sure. Maybe just in the future, maybe limiting, you know, up to one non-resident as long as they're a business owner in the city type of thing. But it's good to have some of that outside perspective at times. You know, someone operating a business in the city.
The EDA, you do not have to be a Dayton resident. So we have a number of EDA members that are business owners in Dayton but do not live here. So that is an option. The EDA theoretically will review all of the same plans that the commission reviews if they're business related.
Does the EDA allow residents that are non-business owners
Yes.
too?
So as long as they have some type of business background or knowledge.
Right. So anyway. I would hope anybody. Drive by a business sometime.
So again, the staff's intention is to leave these open for at least a month in between the time the council accepts the resignation and the time that they appoint a replacement. For planning commission, the deadline would be Monday, June 16th, and then for the EDA, it's Monday, July 16th. Population estimates. So we received population estimates from the Met Council for 2024. So again, these are a year old. Dayton's 2024 population estimate is 10,784. I'm just going to round it to 11,000. And then within the 2020 to 2024 population change, we've added about 3,572 residents. So I'm just going to say round it up to 3,600. You compare that to, we're here down in the red, the pink bars are our neighboring cities for Corcoran, Maple Grove, and Rogers. So as you can see where the lines line up, we're added the most residents out of any city in Hennepin County other than Minneapolis.
I'd encourage you, when you contrast households, is to look at our building permit activity from like that period to see how it lines up with their forecast too,
Yeah.
for households.
That's probably my last stuff. Oh, no, I do have one more. Our next meeting is going to be on July 3rd. Would you all, are you all planning on being here?
I guess, let me pose this question. Do we have I'm assuming so, but do we have enough stuff for a July meeting?
We have 3 items so far.
Okay. I will not be here July 3rd.
Would you like to move it?
I mean,
Yes?
personally, I think it makes sense to move it from everyone's perspective, applicants.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Everyone's
anybody coming here would rather be somewhere
Yeah,
else
especially,
rather
you
than
know,
sitting at a planning commission meeting
till
on
9
the
o'clock at
3rd
night.
of July.
My preference would be to push it to the 10th.
I'd agree.
Agree.
Okay, July 10th.
Good night.
All right. Make a motion to adjourn.
The one community event you missed, John, was the Dayton Car Show starting tomorrow night
Oh,
at
yeah.
LC Stevens Park. So another LC Stevens
There we go. Okay.
item.
I will add that.
I should be there in my old Jeep,
How old is it?
51.
Ooh. Nice.
I'll second the motion to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Meeting ends at 8:59.